This picture is the Shrine of the Good Shepherd at the San Damiano Retreat Center in Golconda, Illinois. Groups from Immanuel have visited there for retreats over the years, and in fact, it's where we've had our women's retreat for the past 3 years. And this statue, you can only see the top half of it. It stands along the road between the main building and the cottages. And as you drive towards the cottages, you will probably miss it, and it will be behind you. But as you drive back towards the main gate, because you cannot drive through, you have to go down to the end of the road and turn around and come back, you won't be able to miss it because it's huge. It's 35 feet tall, and it faces the river. It's so big that when you first come up on it, so close, it can be a little daunting, but then you notice Jesus' face and the tenderness with which he cradles that lamb. And you can just hear him whisper those words, "I am the good shepherd." That statement, "I am the good shepherd," is just one of the I am sayings in John's gospel, and some of the others are, "I am the vine, I am the bread of life, I am the way, the truth, and the life, I am the door, I am the resurrection and the life." And anybody who was listening in Jesus' day would be drawn back to that conversation between Moses and God at the burning bush, when Moses asked for God's name, and God's response is, "I am who I am." In John's gospel, Jesus makes it very clear that he and God are one. In fact, it's right there in black and white at the end of chapter 10. "I and the Father are one," Jesus says. Jesus shows us what God looks like and who God is. And here, he is the good shepherd. In our Bible, there are several instances of God's care being likened to that of a shepherd. We're accustomed to that. We know Psalm 23 by heart. We speak it at funerals and during times we need to find comfort in those dark places in life that we sometimes find ourselves. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul." Find a Bible in the pew, or if you have a Bible, take it out. Turn to Psalm 23. Look at those words. I'll give you a moment. Look at them in black and white. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me in paths of righteousness." That is, in ways that nurture my relationship with him. He leads me in those ways, right pathways. "Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You fight off what threatens me, and you pull me back from places I don't need to go. You anoint my head with oil that's healing balm. You heal me, Lord." These are images of nurture and protection and rescue. They're images of gentleness and care. They're images of authority and strength. In the John passage, we read that sheep know their shepherd's voice. We know Jesus' voice. We know God's voice. We hear it when we're still and quiet, and we give ourselves over to the promise of the love that he has for us. And we heard it in the 1 John passage today. God is love. There is love because there is God. And the only reason that we are capable of any kind of love is because God loved us first. He even came to be a human being in Jesus. And these are powerful instances and reminders of our place in God's heart. You would think we wouldn't forget that. Now, if you had a chance this morning to peer curiously at your worship order, maybe before service or during the service, and you read through the scripture passages and you noticed the title of the sermon, then I bet the reflecting quote seemed just a little bit out of place. Jamie brought this quote to us during our staff meeting a few weeks ago. It's from a book titled Awareness by Anthony DeMello, who was a Jesuit priest. And among other things, it reminds me that I need to reread books from time to time, because we read this book in our Thursday noon discipleship group last year, and I had no recollection of this quote at all when he brought it to us. So that first paragraph, I've graduated to glasses. Okay, this first paragraph, the first thing you need is awareness of your negative feelings. What negative feelings? Gloominess, for instance. You're feeling gloomy and moody. You feel self-hatred or guilt. You feel that life is pointless, that it makes no sense. You've got hurt feelings. You're feeling nervous and tense. Get in touch with those feelings first. Well, as I read through it and contemplated it with the rest of the staff, I felt like Mr. DeMello was talking directly to me. I get those nervous feelings or those negative feelings. I get moody and gloomy. I do feel self-hatred and guilt. Yes, I am nervous and I get tense. And sometimes I wonder if life really does have meaning. And all those feelings just follow me around like they're intimate members of my family. More often than not, I can't seem to shake them, and I can't seem to find any relief from them. And reading through this quote made me wonder if at some point, without knowing, this author jumped into my head and started taking notes for this book. And then he starts getting really personal and starts talking about how those negative feelings are in me. Well, okay, now he's just meddling. Now, I confess it's easy for me to look outside myself for the problem because the issue couldn't possibly be in me, right? You know, when I'm gloomy and I'm moody and I'm hating myself, it's those times I find that I think that I'm unlovable and unworthy and untalented and unintelligent, you know, all those uns, and a few of the ins too, incompetent, insufficient, and inept. It's those times that I do not have much grace for myself. And I've discovered it's usually just me that's thinking that. All the people around me tend to have a great deal more compassion and mercy for me than I have for me. And I can very easily be my own worst enemy. The most negative voices that I hear are the ones that I speak to myself. And because during those times I feel this particular way about myself, I think that God must feel that way too. And I bet I'm not alone. Because in reading DeMello's words in our staff meeting notes, it struck me that to be published and to have any kind of success as a book, there has to be more of a universal experience of this. There have to be more people than just me connecting with this. If I have these feelings, then I bet at least some of you do too. I've heard it in our conversations. You didn't say anything explicitly, and I didn't say anything explicitly, but it was there. I've heard the shame that we feel and the guilt that we carry around about various things. Not always, but sometimes it peeks its head up and peers around the corner of our encounter. And I can only recognize it in you because I recognize it in me. And I wonder if you're your own worst critic, too. Sometimes our images of ourselves get sideways. and our images of God get sideways. We mislead ourselves and we think that because we see ourselves in a certain way, that God does too. That God is looking for the worst in us, like God is a big scorekeeper somewhere, constantly waiting and watching for us to screw up. That He expects us to get it wrong, whatever it is. And we forget who God is and who we are to God. We forget that. And we forget it more easily than we could ever imagine. We forget that Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd," and that Jesus is still the good shepherd. And that as believers, we look to Jesus to show us what God looks like. Any characteristics we might conjure up of what God is like have to be held up against who Jesus is. Jesus is the good shepherd, calling us by name, going ahead of us, laying down His life for us, and leading us into the fullness of life, this life, the next life, all life. Jesus is with us always, nurturing us, guiding us, sustaining us, caring for us, even when we do not notice it, even when we forget His love for us. When I was in seminary, I took a preaching class, as most seminarians do. Now, I didn't want to take a preaching class because I didn't want to preach, which may sound a little strange since that's what I'm doing right now, but I didn't want to do it. But it was required to be able to finish my degree, and so I reluctantly signed up to take this class the first semester of my final year in seminary, because if I flunked it, I wanted a second semester to be able to retake the course. Now, the gentleman who taught this class, his name was Sammy Williams, and Sammy was, at the time, pastor of Northminster Baptist Church in Richmond, Virginia. And it turned out that our small class was made up of people who were just as intimidated by preaching as me. So wisely, instead of bombarding us with tomes of the great Baptist preachers and requiring 5, 15 to 20-minute sermons to be given at predetermined times, Sammy first gave us articles and then books written by great saints of the Christian church. And he asked us to read them and to write down our reflections, which we would then informally present to the rest of the class. The first book he gave us was this one. It's Life of the Beloved by Henry Nouwen. Now, I'd never heard of Henry Nouwen, probably because I was raised Baptist, and Nouwen was a Catholic priest, and we didn't read much outside the Bible at New Hope Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Nouwen wrote this book after a request from a friend to speak to the question of what life is all about. He writes in the very beginning that the one word that keeps coming to him is beloved. And he says to his friend, "My only desire is to make these words reverberate in every corner of your being. You are the beloved." He also says, it certainly is not easy to hear that voice in a world filled with voices that shout, "You are no good, you are ugly, you are worthless, you are despicable, and you are nobody," unless you can demonstrate the opposite. Even a great spiritual master like Henry Nouwen had the same trouble that we do, remembering God's love for him, and just like us, he had to pay attention to the gentle ways in which God reminded him. So occasionally, I come back to this book when I forget God's love, which is much more often than I would like. And I come back to a specific couple of pages, pages 30 and 31. And here Immanuel writes, "We are the beloved. We are intimately loved long before our parents, teachers, spouses, children, and friends loved or wounded us. That's the truth of our lives, and that's the truth I want you to claim for yourself. That's the truth spoken by the voice that says, 'You are my beloved.' Listening to that voice with great inner attentiveness, I hear at my center words that say, 'I have called you by name from the very beginning. You are mine and I am yours. You are my beloved. On you my favor rests. I have molded you in the depths of the earth and knitted you together in your mother's womb. I have carved you in the palms of my hands and hidden you in the shadow of my embrace. I look at you with infinite tenderness and care for you with a care more intimate than that of a mother for her child. I have counted every hair on your head and guided you at every step. Wherever you go, I go with you, and wherever you rest, I keep watch. I will give you food that will satisfy all your hunger and drink that will quench all your thirst. I will not hide my face from you. You know me as your own, and I know you as my own. You belong to me. I am your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your lover, and your spouse. Yes, even your child. Wherever you are, I will be. Nothing will ever separate us. We are one." When I opened Immanuel's book back in the mid-90s for the first time, it was like putting balm on a wound. And I hope that hearing his words have been like that for you too. And I hope that you realize that they're not really Immanuel's words. They're Jesus' words. A few weeks ago in our Thursday discipleship group, we read another of Immanuel's works. And it was actually a compilation of his writings put together by the editors who suggested some spiritual exercises at the end of each chapter. And one of those exercises included praying, and during the prayer, speaking these words: "Jesus, you are the beloved. Jesus, I am the beloved. Jesus, we all are the beloved." Now, I was good with speaking 2 out of 3. No problem. But speaking I am the beloved was much more difficult than I anticipated. And I'm wondering if you can speak those words. I am the beloved. Let's try it together. I am the beloved. One more time. I am the beloved. Now, for some of us, that feels really awkward. Well, more than really awkward, very awkward, extremely awkward. Well, even though it feels so odd, I wonder if over the next days and hours and days, if you can keep speaking it in your prayer time as you drive down the road, doing your errands. I wonder if you can keep speaking it. Can you let those words move from your head and your mouth to soak into your soul? Can you really believe yourself when you say, I am the beloved? Can you believe God? As I've listened for God's voice to remind me that I am the beloved, one question has emerged that I just can't get off my mind. What would happen if we really trusted God's love for us? What could we do? What difference could we make in this world? What fears would drop away? The writer of 1 John entreats us to love one another. This is the only new commandment that Jesus gave us. If we really took seriously God's love for us, what might we do to follow that commandment? How could we change our world if we modeled for each other and our community the love that God has for us? It's obvious that something would change because we cannot encounter that kind of love and hold on to it selfishly. It's just too big. It's just too bright. It's just too transformative. This statue at San Damiano that's been behind me, it stands on a 225-foot cliff that overlooks the Ohio River. And I finally figured out that it's so big so it can be seen by the river traffic that goes up and down that waterway, reminding everyone who sees it, including us today, even in a poor reflection of a photograph, because a photograph never captures what the image really is. Can it remind us that Jesus really is the Good Shepherd, that he still is the Good Shepherd, that he loves and nurtures and cares and leads us into life, and life always? Are we willing to trust that love?